I've been thinking a lot about how to make this video, but a few recent experiences have really driven me to see just how much my opinions on and enjoyment of media has changed over the last year or two. I wanted to make this a free-flow stream of consciousness, but I knew I would miss something critically important or verbally misstep. I didn't want to make this an entire scripted and edited affair because that would become miserable to edit, and I wanted to actually get this out. So welcome to a scripted audio essay with some vaguely applicable gameplay in the background. Quick note, a lot of my specific verbiage will come from my experience in a graduate level writing and philosophy class, so while I will attempt to make this more approachable, the philosophy itself is rooted in those experiences, and thus will be a bit difficult to extricate from its home in my mind. I'm not trying to turn my nose up or seem smarter than anyone else, it's just my honest experience and opinions framed in the most effective way I know how. But yes, the title of this video is not misleading clickbait. In addition to my efforts to remove hyperbole and superlatives like best, worst, and the like, I've recently decided to try and remove the unsupported assertions of good, bad, and all their assorted synonyms from my critical lexicon. Naturally, these words get used regardless, and I'm not above throwing them in for views or catchy titles, but it is their unsupported assertive forms that I've tried to remove. What are unsupported assertions? Simply put, it's when you make a statement that has no backing or evidence. Even if that statement is generally considered true, you need to back it up with something other than raw opinion, feeling, or recursion. While not strictly a logical fallacy, an unsupported assertion will leave your argument without a leg to stand on because it tries to reinforce its own truth without any support. I definitely am not fully free of these in my own arguments, they're so common and subtle that they creep in constantly, but my goal is to at least attempt to support all my statements with logic or reason, or else clearly state when something is merely a matter of opinion or emotion. And so we get to the words that I've stopped using. The vast majority of the time I've seen people use superlative arguments, it has been unsupported. Statements like, that game's terrible, or that movie has bad writing, or even positive statements like, that game is good, or I love that type of music, are claims without evidence beyond emotion or opinion. Even if you get slightly more specific, if you can't follow it up with a because statement, then you're making an unsupported claim, a claim that effectively means nothing. But why bother supporting your claims? Sure, you'll be more persuasive if you can back up your points with evidence, but what if you're just playing something for fun, or watching something you have no intent to talk to anyone else about? Why would you bother finding supporting evidence if you don't even want to make a claim? Well, this is where I'm clearly biased, as both a design analysis YouTuber and a person who just loves learning as much as possible. But I posit that digging deeper into the media you consume will help you more clearly identify what you like, help you understand why you don't like other things, and thus be both more able to enjoy experiences with good and bad media, as well as being able to live more fully aware of your choices and habits, an ideal that can help not only your entertainment, but to improve the quality of your life as a whole. Bold claims, I know. And while I could spend the next hour or so supporting them, seeing as how I've statistically lost 80% of you already, let's talk about some recent examples of my own personal experiences with media that have led to me making this video in the first place. First, and what's most likely the game in the background, is Dark Deity. I've been playing DD on and off for the last month or two. I think the game is deeply flawed, from its various bugs, to its UI and UX issues, to its confusing and overwhelming systems. Being presented with 4 promotion options every time I get a unit means I don't have a feel for the type of gameplay a unit offers outside of my intuition on their stats and abilities before being locked into a choice. Not knowing what my weapons will become and forcing my weapons to change with most promotion branches means I might invest much of my money into what ends up being a dead track. The fact that there are only a handful of base unit types which promote into wildly different classes means that most units struggle to maintain a sense of identity upon promotion. That said, I can appreciate what it's trying to do even if it misses the mark. Building a diverse army of units with different damage or armor types creates an intricate web of soft counters. Many maps rely on having a mix of damage and armor types to encourage the use of specific combinations of units as their main form of map complexity. The class and weapon systems allow you to build incredibly powerful units, but the armor and damage types means that one unit cannot beat every single enemy by design, at least without a lot of luck. The fairly minor stat penalties upon unit death, rather than full permadeath, means that while I am strongly incentivized to not lose units, and will take efforts to keep them alive, I don't particularly care to restart when one unit dies, so long as my core strategy for the chapter is still possible. These are but a small portion of my gripes and enjoyments of Dark Deity, a game I was often told was simply bad or boring, with no qualifiers or explanations. While I don't consider the game to be a masterpiece and will likely not play it again after beating it except to make content, I feel far better about having played it, experienced it for myself, and gained far more insight into the way the game systems work and what I feel it does well, rather than simply writing it off as a bad game and never giving it a chance at all. For my second example, something a bit outside of my usual ballpark which will almost certainly raise opinions: Disney's new movie, Wish. I feel like this is one of the few times in recent memory where I clearly and immediately found myself disconnecting from and disliking a piece of media almost in entirety. I thought that at some level the core premise was interesting, but beyond that, the whole thing felt incredibly corporate and uninspired. To support this claim without having to summarize the entire movie, the characters were incapable of explaining almost anything outside of song. The songs themselves were not particularly memorable and felt more jarring than anything else. Several scenes were included that attempted to force the over-the-top comedy which both ruined the dramatic pacing and failed to be funny at all. The main character lampshades herself every time she is used for exposition, which breaks suspension of disbelief and calls to attention the fact that the film is aware that it's a film, yet fails to use that energy in any enjoyable way. Many comparisons to the writing of Square Enix Forspoken came to mind, which is not a positive comparison. The Easter egg references are both superficial and are called out by the characters, making them feel far less clever and far more obnoxious than if they had never been mentioned at all. All of these and more are various flaws that my wife and I identified with this film while we watched it on a whim a few days ago. I could sum it up by just saying, bad movie, bad writing, and while that wouldn't be strictly untrue, it would still be a disservice to leave it at that, because that sort of statement says nothing other than I didn't like it, and I don't hold a very high opinion of its quality. It doesn't specify why the writing is bad, or how jarring its songs or attempted comedy moments were, or any of the above. And while I'm likely not going to watch it again, and will probably never have another conversation about the movie, being able to break it down and analyze why I didn't like it made the process of watching it with my wife a much more memorable and enjoyable experience, and helped me retroactively appreciate other pieces of media that I've watched recently, which the internet pans using the same brushes of bad writing or full of modern contrivance, but are far, far less egregious, in my mind, than this textbook example. So yes, avoiding simplifying things as simply bad or good has definitely made me enjoy my life far more. These two examples lean generally more negative than positive, but see if you can't reflect on something positive and piece out why specifically you enjoy it. That's my challenge to you. Let me know what you thought of this video. It's definitely very different from my usual fare, and so I probably won't be making too many of these in a row unless they absolutely pop off. But I would be doing both the viewer and myself a disservice to not give myself a chance to speak about the things I'm passionate about on the platform that I put years into building. Before we go, a huge shout out to the Goosegard channel members C2 Peekly, Enigmatic Mr. L, The Big Herman 007, NKO Rico, Bro Duderman, Kumi, and Miss Mesmerism, and until next time, this is Mythral Zenith signing out. Have a great day, everyone.